right. As an IT admin, basically I want to get Wi-Fi profiles on my machine, on my end user's machine. And those Wi-Fi profiles are authenticated with a certificate. So I want all that to happen automatically, and to get those certificates, one of the ways to get those certificates is to use the SCEP protocol, and the certificate authority issuing those certificates would be Microsoft ADCS. That's going to be running the NDES server, and the NDES is the server that talks SCEP. So, like high level, how this works is that the Mac talks to Fleet using the SCEP protocol, and then Fleet forwards that SCEP traffic to Microsoft NDES. And the value that Fleet provides here as the middleman is to be able to get the one-time passcodes from Windows NDES. This adds an extra level of authentication. Also, if a macOS device has been offline for a while and then it tries to get a certificate via SCEP, Fleet will notice that and reissue the profile with an updated one-time passcode. Also later, we will add a renewal of certificates. So that's coming later. So this is the first pass of this larger feature. Okay, so how does the configuration look from the front end? You would go to Settings, Integrations, Mobile Device Management, and then here is the new item, Simple Certificate Enrollment Protocol, and we call out that we currently only support NDES. We can edit this, and this first item is for the SCEP server that talks SCEP protocol. And then these next three items are just needed to get the one-time passcode. So we do some validation here. If I put in some bad values here and try to save, we get an error here. So that's the front end. So let's jump into kind of the demo that I have pre-prepared for the full process, and also show how it works in the API. So here's how this looks in the API. Fleet config, kind of the same thing you saw. So I'm just gonna play this part of the video because it'll show the full flow. Command with a real password, and this command returns the configs. So as you can see, it returns a hidden password. So this password is actually encrypted in the database. It's protected by the server private key, so it cannot be extracted by the front end after it was set. In fact, in my case, my private key is held in 1Password. It's not even on my machine, so this password is pretty secure. So now that we've set it up and we validated that these paths are good, the next thing to do is to create a profile that will request a certificate from my Mac. Okay, I brought up a sample profile. So this is a Apple config profile. This is the payload type. And there's some variables here. First, we have the SCEP challenge. So specifying this variable, Fleet will see this variable and will retrieve the SCEP challenge and insert it here so that the device can use the proper challenge when requesting a certificate. The other thing to note is that we have this proxy URL. So this URL is unique for host/profile. So Fleet will also insert the proper URL over here. There is one more variable we support, which I'm not using right now. And that variable is this fleetvar host end user email IDP, which comes from the identity provider. My VM doesn't have that variable right now, but I will test it later by manually setting it in the database. So this variable would normally go in your CN. So let's change this name to NDES demo. Let's go ahead and save this, and now let's add it to Fleet on controls, custom settings, and I will add it here, and I will bring up my VM for a second. So we can see the profiles I have here and things in my keychain. So we'll go ahead and add the profile I just saved. It's this one, open, add. And the profiles are pushed out every 30 seconds or so. So it should automatically go out. So let's go ahead and wait for it to show up. And here we go. So we see the profile here, and if I click on this profile, we see the actual path where it got the certificate from, which is the host UID and the profile UID. We have the NDES demo certificate name, which we put in here. And here's the actual certificate. Now you see these other two, these are kind of intermediate certificates. This is the certificate that was fetched to kind of wrap the certificate request. And this is just a local certificate that was generated as part of the process. And both of these are cleared out automatically. If I close and reopen my keychain, they're not going to be there. Yep, so we just have this one certificate. Now, if we go to our NDES server, so this is our NDES server in another VM. Let's refresh this. Let's open up the last certificate. And we see NDES demo right here. So we see that this certificate showed up as issued in the certification authority on the Windows server that's running NDES. Okay, so now that we've covered like the main use case, let's touch on some of the issues. Okay, so that's kind of as the video said, the main use case. I want to show a couple more things. One is we added some additional error handling if this whole process fails. So I'll show how that looks like right here. Pause. Okay, so we saw this fail. Let's click into it. So we have the custom message here, and this password cache is full. We could not populate this this variable. So that's one error. Another error that could happen is if it can't reach the NDES server. That's one thing that we should also see an error for. Another type of error that will happen is if we use like an invalid variable name, like maybe it's misspelled. That should also error out. And currently we're only supporting the macOS config profiles. So we should get an error if we're trying to use fleet variables in DDM or Windows profiles. Now let's go back and talk about the config in a little bit more detail. All right, so that's kind of the main UI and API flow. I did want to show a couple more things. So I wanted to point out a couple things in GitOps. Let's see if we can cause it to fail. So let's put So this is how this config would look in GitOps. So I'm just demonstrating um, a good config and a bad config here.
And a bad config for the admin URL. And let's do dry run.
Yeah, and you see one of the errors when it's a validation error because we validate those paths, and the other one is what happens when you have a good config.
Let's go back and use the correct URL and do a dry run again. And so the dry run actually validates both URLs. But since it's a dry run, we would expect this still to be blank on the server. Let's go back and do a real run. Go back to the server, refresh, and now we got our settings that we can see. This password is encrypted. So,
all right, that kind of covers the things I wanted to show. And the last thing is where kind of the documentation. The main documentation is going to be in this feature guide. We're highlighting the main use case for these certificates, but besides Wi-Fi, they can also be used for like VPN and a few other things. And so this guide is going to be published with the release. That's all I had. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Victor and Rachel.
Okay.
Next thing.
Before we move on, Dave, would you mind asking your question for the recording?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering about passing serial number like UPN or email address as variables. The certificate for the client certificate is going to be used, like you said, for VPN or radius authentication, where you need to know that service needs to know the serial number of the device to identify it. So just wondering, and I think the documentation around the types of data are actually in this article here.
Yeah, so right. So you're talking about this for authentication or to put that information into the CN?
Into the CN.
Okay. Well, currently we're only supporting the IDP email because that is the main customer's requirement that we're building this for. But yeah, we could easily add additional things into that CN.
The serial number, we get all of the variables that the Apple MDM protocol supports, right, Victor? Like with the ones that are built-ins, like the serial number is one, computer name, I think is another one, right?
I'm
Or am I
talking
wrong
about
about
this that we're putting into the profile.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Like we Fleet added that variable, but there's also these, right? I can't remember the exact format, but there's several that Apple supports
Oh, okay.
out of the box.
Yes,
and there's,
yes.
Yeah, Marco just linked to a doc. One of those is serial.
Okay.
And then there's some other ones. And then custom variables, if you're using GitHub, right? You can put any variable in your repo and reference that variable in a profile as well.
Right,
So,
but with the GitOps flow, that variable is going to be the same.
correct.
The same for all devices. This variable that's prefixed to the fleet var, this is inserted by the server. So this could be unique per host.
Yep. But yeah, if you wanted to add some, I guess, some non-unique variable that was used in each profile, you could add it to your repo as well. And that's
I think
users
don't really want to put non-unique, or like they want to put like definitely the serial number. So like that article around the basic variables that the host provides via macOS, are those supported with this feature?
Yes. I mean, those variables are supported for all profiles, right? We should just try them and add them, add
We
that
have.
comment to this article.
Okay, cool.
So there's this Okta, the SCEP article that I linked to here. We've done some testing too for another use case to connect to a tool with Okta Verify. Yeah.
Cool.